She said it like a game show host. "Mom, I have a surprise for you." Her smile was too bright, her voice too sweet, and before I could answer she pressed a thick envelope into my hands. I tore the flap and slid out a stack of papers that smelled like ink and panic. At the top, in bold black, sat a number my eyes didn't want to read: $600,000. My daughter, of all people, had handed me a debt the size of a house and called it a surprise. The greedy motive showed itself in the second breath. "It's not that bad," she said, moving around my kitchen like she owned the air. "The payments will be fine once we roll your house into it. Equity, Mom. We'll refinance the whole thing together. It's smart." She said "we" as if my name had always been part of her plan. Then came the twist that kicked the chair out from under me. The debt was not just hers. On the second page, half hidden behind the list of bridge loan terms and merchant cash advance stacks, I saw my own name. Co-borrower. Somehow, somewhere, somebody had used my social security number and scrawled a version of my signature on lines I had never seen. The personal guarantee was already filed. If she missed payments, they would come for me, my savings, my pension, my house. Keep watching, because that was the moment I stopped being the mother who covered for her and started being the woman who would tear her pretty lies right out by the roots. It was a soft Saturday afternoon before that envelope. The kind of day when dust dances in the sun and you can hear the neighbor mowing 2 blocks over. I had a pot of soup on, chicken and rice, because simple food keeps the heart steady. My daughter Paige had texted that morning, "Be there at 2. Big news." I pictured a baby announcement, a promotion, a ring. Not this. Not a ledger full of wolves. She came in like spring thunder. Blonde hair in a high ponytail, nails painted a cheerful coral, jeans with knees too white for real work. "Hey Mom," she sang, kissing my cheek and taking a long sniff of the soup. "Smells amazing." Then she put the envelope on the table between us like a magician laying down her best card. When I saw the number, I thought for a second my heart had forgotten how to count. 600,000. The pages behind it had bright logos from lenders I didn't recognize and fine print that looked like thorns. There were merchant advances at impossible rates, a string of short-term working capital loans, a line from a private lender in Phoenix, a high-limit card with a promotional balloon that had already popped. Every page felt like a step down a dark stair. I looked up. "What am I looking at, Paige?" "Opportunity," she said, and smiled like a coach at halftime. "Look, I started the studio. You know that. The build-out cost more than I thought. Then we had to replace the HVAC at the new space. And the lease deposit was triple because we don't have a long credit history yet. It got messy." Messy. My voice came out flat. "This is not messy. This is a sinkhole." She waved a hand. "Every business starts like this. You invest. You leverage. You scale." "Paige, I taught 4th grade for 30 years. I have never leveraged anything but a coupon," I said. "Why is my name on this?" She looked away, then back at me with soft eyes she used to borrow, even as a teenager, when she wanted to skip curfew. "It's just the form, Mom. They needed a co-borrower for the big loan because I'm new. You said you'd always have my back." I did say that. I said it in hospital rooms when she had strep, and in parking lots after cheer practice when the car wouldn't start, and outside a courtroom when her first husband forgot how to be kind. I said, "I have your back for 29 years, and I meant it then. But there is a difference between a hand at your back and a hook in your spine. I never signed this," I said, touching the crooked version of my name. "And I never gave anyone permission to use my social." Her cheeks colored. "It's just an initial." And the broker said. "What broker?" "A guy from church. Well, from a friend's church. He knew how to get approvals fast." She said fast like it was a holy word. My hands were cold now. "And your plan is what? To wrap my house into this debt so you can breathe?" "It's just math, Mom. You have $400,000 in equity. If we refinance and cash out, we wipe the worst balances and keep working the good ones. Then when the studio blows up, we pay it all back. Easy." She used "we" again. She used my house like a line on a spreadsheet. She used my future like a rag to wipe her numbers clean. I set the stack down with care. "Make me understand something," I said. How does a person I raised in a small yellow kitchen, who knows what it costs to work for every dollar, hand her mother an envelope like this and smile? Paige's eyes went glassy. Because you're making a big deal out of a solution. I'm trying to fix it. And you've always said we're a team. A team. A team is two people running the same way. This felt like discovering we were not even on the same field. She took a breath and switched to a voice softer than milk. Mom, I don't want to scare you. But they're already calling. If I miss another payment, they can freeze the studio account. The landlord says one more late check and we're out. The staff has to be paid Monday. There's staff. She laughed, a brittle sound. 2 trainers and a receptionist. It's not crazy. I'm building something good. I stood up and poured soup I didn't want anymore. How long has this been going on? A few months. How many is a few? She stared at her nails. 9. 9 months is a pregnancy. 9 months is a full school year minus summer. 9 months is long enough to pick up a phone and tell the truth 300 times. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. You worry, she said. And if I worried you, you might say no. I needed a yes. I looked at the bottom of the top page again and felt my stomach drop. The personal guarantee tied to that yes was mine. If the studio failed, if the advance demanded daily draws, if the rate spikes triggered, I would wake up to find the floor missing. The memory hit me so fast I had to hold the chair. Years back, the night her first husband left, I took a second job at the grocery to help her and her baby. I clipped coupons and stretched casseroles and hid the good raspberries so they would last for 2 breakfasts. I did it because that is what mothers do. I did it because that is what I promised. But promises are not blind contracts. Promises do not require a person to set themselves on fire to keep another warm. I slid the papers back into the envelope and folded the clasp shut. No, I said. We are not refinancing my house. We are not wrapping my life into your gamble. We're going to the bank on Monday. We're going to the police if we have to. Whoever put my name on this without consent is going to learn a new vocabulary word, felony. Her mouth dropped open. Police? Mom, don't be dramatic. It's just paperwork. It's not just paperwork when it steals a person's life, I said. And it's not dramatic to call theft by its name. She pushed her chair back and stood. I can't believe you. After everything I've done for you. The appointments, the groceries, the rides to church. I raised a hand. Those are kindnesses. They are not a down payment on my house. Her eyes went cold. Fine, she said, voice flat as a pain. Then I guess I'll figure it out myself. But if things go bad, don't expect me to come running when the lights get shut off. I almost smiled then, because my lights were not the ones flickering. Still, the pettiness stung. She was leaving punishment on the table next to the debt. She grabbed her purse, then paused, as if remembering she had one last trick. Mom, she said quietly, I showed the broker your taxes. He said your credit and your income made the deal easy. He said you'd thank me later when the studio grows and pays you back. She looked at me like a child who doesn't understand why a fire burns. I was trying to help both of us. By handing me a bomb, I said. She rolled her eyes and left. The door clicked hard behind her. I sat down at the table and let myself shake. I am not a crier by nature. 30 years of 4th graders will drain the well of tears and fill it with stubbornness. But that afternoon I put my face in my hands and let 2 slow tears slip into my palms. Then I wiped them like I was erasing a board and stood up. I pulled the blue binder from the pantry, the one with everything that matters, my will, my pension letters, the title, the last 3 years of taxes, a list of passwords written in pencil and tucked into a sleeve that says do not touch. I placed the envelope beside it and made a new tab out of a post-it, Page Loans. I wrote the date and the number $600,000. Because writing it gives it a place to live that is not my chest. Then I made a pot of strong coffee and a list, because lists are the bones of courage. Freeze credit at all 3 bureaus tonight. Call the bank Monday at 9 a.m. Ask for their fraud department. Pull a full credit report and circle anything I don't recognize. Make an appointment with a consumer rights attorney. Ask Carol to come. Call Pastor Tom, ask if he knows a broker working the congregation circuit. Buy a small safe. Move ID, social security card, checkbooks, passport. At 6, the house went quiet in that way a house does when it tries to comfort you. I turned off the soup and poured it into 2 containers. I labeled them with a strip of tape because doing something simple reminded me I still ran my own life. Then I put on my walking shoes and went around the block, letting the air move the hot in my head to someplace cooler. When I got back, the porch light had clicked on by itself, the way Frank wired it years ago. I miss that man. He could fix a leaky pipe with string and patience. He could fix a fight with the kind of silence that lets the other person breathe. I poured 2 fingers of the good bourbon he used to keep for Christmas and let it burn my tongue. Then I opened my laptop. The credit report came like a confession. There were 3 lines I had never seen, a store card in a chain I've never shopped, a business line from a company with a cheerful name, and a cash advance product dressed up as an installment saver. All opened within the last year. All listing an email address that was almost mine, 1 letter swapped, and a phone number that belonged to no one in my contacts. I called the fraud line for the first one. The woman on the phone spoke softly, like people do when they're sorry for you. "We can start an investigation," she said, "and we'll send a packet." I wrote her name and case number in the margin of my list. The second company put me on hold, then pulled me off hold just to put me back on. The third insisted I had applied at a kiosk with a tablet in a mall in another city. "I do not go to malls," I said. "And I do not apply for debt with styluses." The man laughed like he realized he had a mother somewhere too. "We'll flag it," he said. At 10, my phone buzzed with a text from Paige. "I didn't mean to scare you. We can talk tomorrow. Maybe you could just cover this week's payroll? It's only $7,800. Only." I stared at the number until it blurred, then put the phone face down and walked to the sink. I washed the 3 mugs from the day, the one she used, the one she didn't, the one I made and forgot to drink, and let the hot water run over my hands until it went warm. Then the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and saw no one. On the mat, another envelope. No stamp, no return address. I brought it inside with a dish towel like it might bite. Inside were copies of 3 applications with my name signed. The S's were mine, the R was not. At the bottom of one page, a note in blue ink, "You're already on the hook. Might as well make it work for both of us." I sat very still. The kitchen clock ticked like a metronome, teaching my heart to keep time. I slid the papers into a Ziploc because television has taught me at least one practical habit. Then I took a deep breath and wrote one more line on my list: 7 install cameras tomorrow. I slept in pieces. I dreamed of numbers chasing me down a hallway, long receipts like streamers stuck to my shoes, a pen that wrote my name without my hand. At dawn, I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and watched the light pull itself across my lawn. The first birds were brave enough to sing. The soup sat in the fridge like an apology. At 8, I called my sister Carol, because some fights require witnesses. "Heaven help me," she said when I read her the number. "You should have called last month. But we're not here to scold. We're here to fix. I'll be there at 10. We'll call a lawyer and make someone's Monday miserable." At 9, I was brushing my teeth when my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the transcript popped up: "This is Anthony from Capital Funding regarding your personal guarantee on account ending 4431. We're seeing late-stage balances and daily draws missed. Call today to avoid escalation." I hit play because I needed to hear the voice. It was smooth. It was the kind of voice that sells umbrellas in a drought. It did not sound surprised that an old teacher in a small ranch house was guaranteeing a business downtown with mirrors for walls. I placed the phone on the counter and looked at my face in the little square mirror I keep by the back door. I looked like myself, gray at the temples, lines around my eyes that tell the truth about laughter and worry, only sharper at the edges. You can get sharp at any age. Sometimes betrayal is the whetstone. I put on my cardigan, tied my shoes, and set the envelope with $600,000 back on the table, beside my blue binder and my list. I was not going to be the mother who wrote checks in the dark. I was going to be the woman who flipped on the brightest light in the room. Starting now. Because if you hand me an envelope like that and call it a surprise, I'm going to hand you back a word you don't expect: no. And if you keep pushing, I will learn 3 new words and wear them like a shield: proof, police, lawyer. Carol's car turned into my driveway at exactly 10. I saw her get out with her big tote and her bigger mouth, and I felt something settle in my bones, something like the old feeling you get before a parent-teacher conference when you know the truth is on your side. I opened the door before she knocked. She stepped in, kissed my cheek, looked at the stack, whistled low, and said, "Let's go make someone regret a career choice." We headed for the bank. And I swear to you, the house exhaled as we left, like it was glad to see me walk with my back straight again. Keep watching, because when that bank manager heard the number and saw the signature that wasn't mine, his face changed, and the first domino tipped. When Carol and I walked into the bank that Monday morning, the carpet smelled like lemon polish and the air was too cold for March. A young man in a suit that looked borrowed led us to a glass office with a plaque that read Manager, Derek Shaw. Derek was no older than Paige. He had a trim beard and a practiced smile that went flat the moment he saw the papers. "Mrs. Walker," he said, adjusting his tie. "Where did you get these?" "My daughter handed them to me Saturday," I said. "Called it a surprise." Carol let out a bitter laugh. "Some surprise." Derek spread the pages out, his eyes scanning the signatures, the notary stamps, the terms. His pen tapped the margin. "These are legitimate lenders," he murmured, "but this one? This one here? We flagged them before for predatory advances. And this," he flipped to the back, "has your social security number, Mrs. Walker. Did you authorize this?" "No," I said. "I've never seen it until 2 days ago." He sat back, pen still in hand. "Then you're the victim of identity fraud. And since you're listed as co-borrower, you're also liable until we can prove otherwise." "Liable," Carol repeated, her voice sharp as glass. "She's 78 years old. Retired teacher. Owns her home. Never took a loan in her life except her mortgage, which she paid off 10 years early. And now some slick broker and her daughter's bad judgment saddled her with 600 grand. Derek raised a hand. "I'm not saying it's fair. I'm telling you what it looks like on paper. We'll need to start with an affidavit of fraud, credit freezes, and probably a police report." Police report. That word again, heavy as a gavel. I signed the affidavit with a hand that shook. Derek gave me copies and slid the originals into a folder. "You should know," he said gently, "if these lenders try to collect, they may call you directly. Some of them, they don't play nice." "I can handle phone calls," I said. But I couldn't handle what came next. By Tuesday afternoon, the calls began. A woman with a syrupy voice asked if I was prepared to cover yesterday's daily draw of $2,100. A man with a gravel laugh told me I could save face if I wired $15,000 that day. One caller said they would visit the property if I didn't respond. I wrote every name, every time, every phrase in my blue binder. But with each ring, I felt my stomach tighten. By Wednesday, the neighbors knew. I caught 2 of them, Sharon and Linda, whispering at the end of the driveway when I brought the trash can in. They stopped when they saw me, plastering on smiles that looked like pity. "Heard Paige is in some trouble," Sharon said too brightly. "Kids, huh?" "Kids." I snapped. "She's 34. I pushed the can into the garage and slammed the door harder than I meant to. The humiliation spread like ink in water. At the grocery store, the clerk gave me a cautious look when my card was declined, not because I had no money, but because the fraud freeze triggered. I had to pull out cash from my safe envelope. I saw the woman behind me whisper to her husband, eyes flicking to me with that same look, pity, tinged with judgment. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and read the 3 envelopes shoved under my door. Each one was from a different lender. Each one had final notice stamped in red. Each one had my name bolded like a criminal. Carol sat across from me, chewing her lip. "She's dragging your good name through mud," she said. "I raised her better," I whispered. "Maybe," Carol said. "But raising doesn't always stick." Thursday brought Paige herself. She stormed in without knocking, her face pale and drawn. "Mom, why did you go to the bank?" "Because my name is on your debt." Her voice pitched higher. "Do you know what you've done? They called me. They said you reported fraud. Now they're threatening to shut the studio down. My employees will walk. This is my dream, Mom." "Your dream is not my noose," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Her eyes filled, but not with shame, with anger. "You just don't get it. You've lived your whole life safe. I'm trying to build something big. Risk is part of it. You're supposed to support me. I supported you for 3 decades, I said, rising to my feet. I worked nights. I paid bills. I watched your son when your husband walked. I gave and gave. And now you've given me a debt that could bury me. She slapped the envelope on the table. You wouldn't even know what to do with equity. You'd let it rot in a house until you die. At least I'm using it. For a moment, the room went silent. Then Carol stood, fists tight. You watch your mouth, she hissed. That rotting house is her life's work. That rotting house raised you. Paige turned on her heel and left, her perfume hanging in the air like a curse. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a collector's knock. I dreamed of eviction signs nailed to my door. When I woke, sweat damp on my neck, I went to the mirror and studied my face. Tired. Wrinkled. But still mine. I was not going to hand it over to a daughter who had turned me into collateral. Friday morning, Carol drove me to see a lawyer she knew. Her name was Rachel Dyer, mid-40s, sharp eyes, sharper tongue. She listened as I laid out the story, nodding slowly. This isn't just bad judgment, she said at last. This is fraud. If your daughter signed your name, that's forgery. If the broker filed it, that's conspiracy. Either way, we fight. We collect evidence. We get ahead of it before a judge hears only her side. The word judge made me swallow hard. But Rachel leaned forward. You've already done the smart thing, kept records. Keep everything. Calls, letters, texts. And do not give her another dime. If you cave once, it's over. Carol grinned. Told you she was good. Rachel gave me a card. Next step, we file a fraud report with the state attorney general. Then we subpoena the broker. And if Paige tries to refinance using your property, we'll block it. For the first time all week, I felt the ground steady under me. But humiliation still lingered. On Sunday, at church, whispers followed me down the pew. Paige wasn't there, too busy with the studio, but her absence spoke louder than her presence. People had heard the word debt. They hadn't heard the word fraud. To them, I was just an old woman drowning, with a daughter tossing her anchors. I prayed with my eyes open, staring at the stained glass, asking not for mercy but for backbone. That afternoon, Carol came over with pie. We sat at the table, the blue binder between us. You can't keep sitting still, she said. Every day you wait, she digs you deeper. I know, I said. And I'm done waiting. I took a pen and wrote on the fresh page of the binder, next steps, fight back. I listed. File police report. Meet with Rachel to draft affidavits. Install cameras at the house. Tell Emily, Paige's cousin, so the family knows the truth before Paige spins it. Pull every bank statement back 10 years. Carol smiled, though it was a sad smile. There you are, she said. The Ruth I know. The one who doesn't let 4th graders walk over her. Or loan sharks, either. I sipped my coffee and felt my hand steady around the mug. I let her surprise me once, I said. But no one surprises me twice. I looked at the clock. 6 p.m. The phone rang. I let it buzz, then checked voicemail. A voice I didn't know, low and oily. Mrs. Walker, this is your final courtesy call. You or your daughter need to resolve this balance by tomorrow. If not, we escalate. Don't make us come to the house. I pressed delete, but the words stayed. Escalate. Come to the house. I turned to Carol. I'm not a victim anymore, I said. Tomorrow, I make the first move. I used to tell my 4th graders, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen. That lesson was carved into my bones, and now it became my shield. By Monday morning, the blue binder had doubled in thickness. Every call logged. Every letter sealed in plastic sleeves. Every threat copied in my own hand, word for word. Carol came over with a carton of coffee and a stack of yellow folders. She dropped them on the table with a grin. Teacher's supplies, she said. Color coding never fails. We spread everything out. Red for the forged loans. Blue for the debt collectors. Yellow for family conversations, texts, voicemails, notes. Green for bank records. The kitchen table became a war room, each folder a weapon. Rachel called at 9. "I've drafted the fraud affidavit," she said briskly. "We'll file it with the state AG tomorrow. Meanwhile, I want copies of every document with your forged signature. If Paige or the broker tries to argue, we'll prove intent." "Intent?" I asked. "Yes. It's not just about forgery, it's about proving she knew what she was doing. That's the difference between a mistake and a crime." That word, crime, still caught in my throat. My daughter. Crime. Carol touched my hand gently. "Don't look at her as your little girl in braces. Look at her as the woman who did this. That's who we're fighting." I nodded, though my chest ached. That afternoon, I went through the drawer where I keep birthday cards and old bills. I found an envelope with Paige's handwriting from last year. She'd signed a check to me for rent money when she stayed here a few months. I placed it beside the forged signature on the loan. The difference was clear as sunrise. Her P looped high, the forged one drooped. Her E leaned right, the forged one sagged left. Even my old eyes could tell. I snapped photos, labeled them, and slid them into the binder. Proof. But Paige wasn't sitting still. Tuesday morning, she showed up again, no knock, just the slam of the back door. "Mom, you've got to stop this." She dropped into a chair, her voice trembling but her eyes still sharp. "I heard you went to a lawyer. That's insane. Do you know what you're doing to me?" I looked at her calmly. "I'm doing what you did to me. Putting my name on paper." Her face darkened. "This isn't you. This is Carol whispering in your ear." Carol, standing in the kitchen doorway, barked a laugh. "Sweetheart, if I could whisper this loud, I'd be on the radio." Paige's lips tightened. She turned back to me. "If you file fraud charges, you'll ruin my business. I'll lose everything. You'll be the reason your grandson grows up poor." That was a knife. She knew exactly where to aim. But I didn't flinch. "If your business depends on stealing from me, it deserves to fail," I said. Her face flushed, and she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the clock on the wall rattled. Rachel arrived later that day with her laptop and a portable scanner. She set up shop at my table, scanning every page. "They'll try to say you consented," she said. "So we gather anything that proves otherwise, medical records showing you were never in Phoenix when they claim you signed, your calendar, even witness statements. Carol, you'll testify if needed." Carol puffed her chest. "Gladly. And I'll bring pie." Rachel smiled briefly, then turned serious. "Also, we need to follow the money. Paige couldn't get $600,000 without someone greasing the wheels. Find out if the broker got kickbacks." That night, while the house was quiet, I searched Paige's public social media. Pictures of the studio ribbon cutting, champagne glasses, balloons. Then buried in the comments, one from a man named Tony Vega, "Couldn't have done it without our special financing package. Proud to be your partner." I clicked through his profile. Broker. Phoenix. Same company on the forged loan. I screenshotted everything and added it to the binder. And then I saw something that made me sit up straight, a photo of Paige and Tony together at a gala, smiling, drinks in hand. This wasn't some stranger who helped her. She knew him. She celebrated him. The betrayal doubled in size. The next morning, Carol came by as I was printing the screenshots. I showed her the photo. She let out a whistle. "Honey, that's your smoking gun." She wasn't tricked. She was in bed with him metaphorically, maybe literally. She knew. Rachel nearly clapped when she saw it. "This changes everything. We're not just fighting fraud. We're proving collusion. That makes the case ironclad." But Paige wasn't done. Thursday night, I found another envelope on my porch. No return address. Inside was a single sheet, "Stop filing reports. Families handle things quietly. Or you'll regret it." I put it in a Ziploc too. Then I sat at the table, staring at my hands. They were old hands, veined and lined, but steady now. Fear had burned itself out, leaving only resolve. I picked up my pen and wrote in the binder, "They want me quiet. That means I'm loud enough to scare them." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Because now I wasn't just defending myself. I was hunting the truth, and I had teeth. And the revelation that Paige and Tony were partners in crime? That was the match. The fire was coming. The courthouse smelled like dust and polish. My shoes clicked on the marble floor as Carol and I walked in, my blue binder tucked under my arm like a Bible. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, but nothing prepared me for the sight of Paige sitting on the other side of the room, head high, hair pinned into a perfect twist, and Tony Vega beside her in his slick gray suit. They looked like winners. Until the judge called the case. Walker versus Vega et al., the clerk read, her voice echoing. Fraudulent co-borrower signature, identity theft, loan misrepresentation. My knees trembled, but I forced myself to stand tall. Carol whispered, "You've got this, Ruth," and squeezed my arm. Rachel rose first, cool and calm in her navy blazer. "Your Honor, this case is about betrayal wrapped in ink. My client, Ruth Walker, a 78-year-old retired teacher, never signed her name to a $600,000 loan. Yet her social security number, her address, and a forged signature appear on multiple contracts brokered by Mr. Vega, with the encouragement of her daughter, Paige Walker." Paige shot me a look that could have peeled paint. Tony leaned back, smirking like he was untouchable. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Rachel slid Exhibit A onto the desk, the loan contract with my name. Then Exhibit B, Paige's real handwriting on an old rent check. Then Exhibit C, the gala photo of Paige and Tony, champagne glasses raised. "Notice the difference, Your Honor," Rachel said, pointer tapping the mismatched signatures. "Notice the relationship. This is not an innocent daughter confused by contracts. This is a coordinated act of fraud." Tony's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. Circumstantial." The judge waved him down. "Overruled. Continue." Rachel called me to the stand. My palms sweated, but I held the binder like armor. "Mrs. Walker," she began, "did you ever authorize your daughter or Mr. Vega to sign your name?" "No," I said firmly. "Did you consent to use your social security number for these loans?" "No." "What did you discover when you compared your daughter's signature to the forgery?" "That it wasn't mine, and it wasn't even hers. It was sloppy. They didn't care if it matched because they thought I'd never fight." I lifted the gala photo. "And this? This proves she wasn't tricked. She was celebrating. With him." The room buzzed with whispers. Paige's face flushed crimson. Tony leaned forward, jaw tight. Then it was their turn. Paige stood, smoothing her skirt. "Your Honor," she said sweetly, "my mother is confused. She's been under stress. She said once she would always support me, always sign for me. I thought I had her blessing." "Liar." Carol barked from the benches. The judge banged his gavel. Tony spoke next, his voice oily. This was a standard financing arrangement. Mrs. Walker knew her house had equity. We simply structured it to benefit everyone. Her daughter's business is thriving. This is a family misunderstanding, not fraud. Rachel pounced. "If this was legitimate, Mr. Vega, why was Mrs. Walker's email altered by one letter on the application? Why was the phone number untraceable? Why was the notary deceased for 10 years? Tony's smirk faltered. The judge leaned forward. "Answer the question, Mr. Vega." Tony stammered. "Clerical errors." Rachel pulled out the last card. "Your Honor, I submit Exhibit D, a threatening letter left at Mrs. Walker's home. Stop filing reports or you'll regret it." She turned toward me. "Who else would benefit from silencing you?" The room went still. Paige shifted in her seat. Tony clenched his fists. And for the first time since this began, I felt taller than both of them. I looked directly at Paige. "You didn't give me a surprise, Paige. You gave me a sentence. You tried to bury me so you could stand taller. But I dug my way out, and now everyone can see who held the shovel." Gasps filled the courtroom. Paige's eyes brimmed with tears, but they weren't of guilt, they were of rage. Tony muttered something under his breath. The judge sat back. "I've heard enough for today. Evidence will be reviewed, and formal charges may follow. Until then, Mrs. Walker's liability is frozen, pending the fraud investigation." Frozen. The word lifted the weight from my chest like a stone rolled off a grave. But the moment of triumph was interrupted when Tony leaned close to Paige and whispered, too loudly, "Don't worry. She won't win. Not in the end." I stared at them, at the pair who thought they could reduce me to numbers and ink, and I felt the steel in my spine harden. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. The judge's gavel struck. Court adjourned. The war wasn't done. But the battlefield had shifted, and now, I was the one standing in the light. The waiting was the hardest part. For weeks after that hearing, my phone rang with updates from Rachel, each one another brick added to the wall between me and ruin. The investigation widened. The state attorney's office subpoenaed Tony's records. Paige was called in for questioning. And little by little, the truth spilled out like ink from a broken pen. Tony had orchestrated the entire scheme, setting up fake emails, filing documents with dead notaries, funneling cash through shell accounts. Paige wasn't just a bystander. She was complicit, using my credit and my house as collateral for her dream. They had celebrated their partnership at that gala, photographed and smiling, never imagining the picture would someday hang them. When the charges came, it was almost anticlimactic. Fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Words printed on paper, heavy with meaning. Tony was cuffed outside his office. Paige's mugshot appeared online, her eyes wide and defiant, but the comments beneath the photo weren't sympathy, they were disgust. For me, the relief came slowly. The calls stopped. The letters stopped. The red final notice envelopes no longer appeared on my porch. My house was safe. My pension was safe. My name was safe. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with Carol and Rachel. We drank coffee while the sun slipped low. Rachel smiled for the first time since I'd met her. "Mrs. Walker," she said, "you're free. The court has cleared your liability. The debts are void. Your credit will be restored within 60 days. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was still holding. Carol raised her mug. "To Ruth," she said, "who just proved 78 isn't too old to fight like hell." I laughed, a sound that felt strange after so much heaviness. But it was real. As for Paige, I didn't attend her sentencing. I didn't need to. The girl I once rocked to sleep was gone long before the gavel fell. The woman who betrayed me sat in that courtroom instead. She got probation, community service, and a record that would follow her like a shadow. Tony wasn't so lucky. His sentence was measured in years, not hours. Neighbors who once whispered pity now stopped me in the street, their voices warm. "You showed strength," one said. I would have crumbled. But I hadn't. I had stood. At church, when the pastor asked if anyone had a testimony, I didn't rise. My testimony wasn't words, it was the steady way I walked back to my pew, head held high. And in the quiet moments, when the house creaked at night, I found myself whispering to Frank, my late husband. "I kept it safe," I'd say. "I kept what we built." She tried, but she didn't take it. Now when I flip open the blue binder, it no longer feels like a weight. It feels like armor I wore in battle. At the back on the last page, I wrote one final note: I am not collateral. I am not silent. I am still standing. Because in the end, this story wasn't about money. It was about dignity. About not letting even your own blood rewrite the truth of who you are. So to anyone listening now, let me leave you with this: betrayal can come wrapped in a smile, even from the ones you raised. But betrayal doesn't get the last word, you do. Backhand index pointing right. Tell me, if your child handed you an envelope full of debt and called it a surprise, would you carry it? Or would you fight to take your life back?